Welcome to video number 17. There's just one more after this for the Greater Reality Healing Program. Hi, I'm Dr. Mark Pitstick. Please visit soulproof.com/about to learn about my training, experience, and outreaches so you know you're in good hands with this program. Please watch previous videos before you watch this one, and articles cited are free at soulproof.com/articles. We're at key number 16, and there are only 17 keys about Greater Reality Healing Program, journeying from deeply grieving to brightly shining. And that's certainly for the bodily death of loved ones, people and pets, but for any big change in life that seems like a loss, like a bad thing. And if you've been following us by now, you know that that's a limited human perspective. And really, oftentimes there are great things, good things, things that you planned or just part of life, like bodily death is part of life. Souls finish their earthly schooling. So in this key 16, we're talking about focus on evidence-based information versus the baloney that passes for truth out there, especially about life, death, and afterlife. This key has been partially addressed, but repetition is the essence of learning, and it's certainly important to repeat it. As discussed, a certain amount of grieving for a while is natural when a loved one passes on or any other loss. However, some people get stuck in severe grief for many years or for the remainder of their earthly years. I've encountered people like this. And it's ironic because after they pass on, after they drop their body, after they see the light and the big picture of things, they remember how life is set up and they realize how needless their fears and sufferings were. So how much better to awaken to all that now versus kind of wasting in some ways this earthly incarnation. Big key here, replacing fear-based misinformation with evidence-based information assists your journey from deeply shining to deeply grieving to brightly shining. So let's look at some fears, some commonly held fears, and then the reality behind that statement, what is really real, and the evidence for it. So first of all, fear number one, that bodily death is the end of life. The reality is that your life force, your energy, and that of your loved ones existed before human birth and continues after bodily death, after death of the earthly form. The evidence for that described in articles number 160 and 115. And this discusses respectively the scientific, clinical, and experiential evidence that is based on first-hand experience for life after death. Also, my little book, The Afterlife Evidence, shares the highlights of this evidence. Also, the collective afterlife evidence is mentioned in the book Greater Reality Living by Dr. Gary Schwartz and myself, and my Soul Proof book. Fear number two, you'll never again see loved ones who have passed on. However, in reality, we know, based on scientific, clinical evidence, that wonderful and very real contacts with post-material loved ones can continue while you're on Earth and after you pass on. The evidence behind that is discussed in article number 1 about scientific evidence for post-material communication, article number 6 about evidential mediums, and number 9, visiting with, quote, departed loved ones now, how you can do that, how you can facilitate afterlife contacts, which some people call after-death communications, with your loved ones. Article number 28 talks about afterlife contacts, and the wonderful book by Dr. Gary Schwartz, The Afterlife Experiments. Fear number 3, your loved ones might end up in a fiery eternal hell forever because fill in the blank with your needless concerns. For example, they passed on by suicide, weren't baptized, were in the wrong religion. I mean, people have so many fears, and they torture themselves, and they create a self-induced hell or a more hellish experience needlessly. Other concerns, they weren't saved. They sinned too much. They didn't attend church. I mean, the list is long, and this is really a reality for a lot of people. Again, I work with tens and tens of thousands of people for over 50 years to date, and they share with me, in a pastoral counseling role, as a clinical psychologist, as a holistic physician. Keep in mind that a lot of people wear a mask, and when you see them, like, how you doing? Great. How you doing? Great. Everybody's lying. Most people have so many fears, symptoms, worries, and so on. And that's why I take all this time to share with you how you can heal those. And what's more, how you can use those seemingly bad things, struggles, challenges, to grow, to transform, to awaken. So the reality is that, so we're talking about, that your loved ones might end up in a fiery eternal hell forever. And the reality is that God, higher intelligence, is the source. It's the repository of all love, peace, and understanding. And you and your loved ones, as we discussed, are integral, infinite, eternal, and beloved parts of all that now and always. As such, the above fears, being in hell forever, are clearly without basis. How could you ever be separate from your true nature? Now, you may think you are separate, but you can always awaken to who you really are and who walks beside you always. So that's a really important distinction. People can experience being in hell, or they may think they deserve it because they feel guilty and so on. And, they receive a certain amount of punishment from that, but it's punishment from themselves. They don't forgive themselves. They think they should be punished. And so, for people worried about, well, is there justice in the universe? Yeah, there is. You don't have to worry about that. It's not your job, okay? So consider, to this point, biblical parables about Jesus saving the one lost sheep and the prodigal son being welcomed home. So these point to the never-ending, loving, and forgiving nature of God, the heavenly host, the cosmos, how life is set up. Also remember that human ways, lack of compassion, need for judgment, vengeful punishment, aren't divine ways. Just because humans think that way, we shouldn't extrapolate and think that's how God operates. Evidence for these evidence-based views. Article number 13, the nature of Creator. Number 15, the nature of humans. 16, evidence-based spiritual teachings. 17, the Ask Your Soul, Angels in the Light technique. 73, Angels. 107, the afterlife. What is the afterlife really like? 42, what is the afterlife like for evildoers? And 83, am I Christian? Fear number 4, again, fear-based and erroneous fears, misinformation, is that you won't be able to survive being away from your loved ones. People believe this. They believe they have no control, overlapsing into severe depression, anxiety, illness, and desiring to die. The reality is you have much more wisdom, power, and control than you know. People who fear these things see themselves as helpless and hopeless victims, when in fact we are not that. So it's important to know about our true nature. Your church and some people might have told you that you are a weak, worthless, and lowly sinner. The flesh is weak. These kinds of quotes, for example, in the Bible. But now you know that this teaching, you're lowly, worthless, and all that. You need an intermediary between you and God, or you could go to hell forever. These are attempts to control you and possibly take your money. So yes, it can feel very tough after big changes, such as a loved one passing on. However, the Greater Reality Healing Program and other resources can help immensely. And many loving people and wise teachers can help you get through what seems like your dark night of the soul. So you don't have to deal with this alone, and you don't have to stay stuck for the remainder of your life. Also, don't forget you're lovingly guided, assisted and loved by angels, guides, master teachers, and the light. Finally, as we mentioned, you and your loved one may actually be together right now in another space-time of life, recalling that on average about 40% of a person's essence, consciousness, is needed to manifest and create a earthly experience. So other parts of who you and your loved one are may again be home together or off having another adventure, because what we're going through on Earth, although it may not seem like it, is an adventure. And someone like Helen Keller recognized that and made the profound statement, life is either a daring adventure or is nothing at all. And the evidence for what I'm discussing here, much of that and the resources behind it have been discussed in the 15 preceding keys. Hopefully you know all this by now. Fear number 5, God took my loved one away. In reality, your loved ones, hopefully in alignment with their spiritual support team in the light, chose the timing and meaning of their changing worlds. It wasn't a unilateral decision by a huge dictator in the sky, nor does any such deity exist. Good evidence shows that major events are often pre-planned, not always, but often, by you and your soulmates who serve as cast members in this earthly play. So that's a big statement. Again, major events, not everything like, am I going to pick this pen up now or later? But big events can possibly, the potentiality for them, the possibility for them, can be pre-planned for good reasons. And among your soulmates, 25 or so primary ones, a larger number of secondary and tertiary ones, those soulmates play or fulfill roles while you're on Earth to be your family members, your friends, or even the bad guys, the person who hit a loved one in a car and so on, as we discussed in another video. So that's the big view of life, and that's the most accurate view I can find, and again, lots of evidence behind it. Evidence for it, articles number 13, The Nature of God, 25, Pre-Birth Planning, number 68, The Big Picture of Life. Article number 78, Why Did God Take My Loved One? Number 82, which is, this video is about journeying from deeply grieving to brightly shining. Fear number 6, based on fear-based misperception, misinformation. It's my fault that my loved one passed on. If only I would have, fill in the blank with what you think you could have or should have done to prevent it. The reality and evidence, same as number 5 before. There's good evidence that souls pass in the right time and the right way. Those who pass on by suicide, for example, people, loved ones, really feel guilty about this. And they're like, I should have seen it, I should have done something for it. If a person has had all they can take, or if they're so imbalanced or acting impulsively or taking drugs and they're that close to overdosing, there's really nothing you can do. I mean, no, you're powerful, but don't think you have, power to control someone else. I mean, people are going to do what they're going to do, especially when they're more beginner souls and aren't thinking so clearly. So let that one go, please. Fear number 7, my life will never be happy and peaceful again. My relationships will suffer and may end. I need alcohol and drugs to block the pain and feel good. So this addresses a couple of things that often happen when a loved one passes, whether it's the passing of a child or another loved one. Relationships do suffer sometimes, and sometimes there's divorce, and people turn to alcohol and drugs. But the relationship problems don't have to happen, and seeking alcohol and drug use is a poor strategy. It's just temporary numbing out and doesn't work long term. So the reality is that whether or not that happens, relationships, substance abuse, depends on your predominant thoughts, words, and deeds. Depends on how much you reach out for help. This creates the quality of your life, your decisions, moment to moment. You can always decide, no matter what is happening to or around you, to focus on higher energy feelings and actions based on love, peace, joy, gratitude, compassion, enthusiasm, and enlightenment. Many people have done this, and you can too. The evidence for this, article number 2, when a child changes worlds. Number 13, when a loved one's earthly body dies, which is for the passing of non-child relationships. Number 19, the great news. Number 62, I'll still be sad, but not as much. And article number 64, drugs, alcohol, and greater reality living. For those of you who are grieving after the bodily death of a pet, see articles number 22, when your pet transitions, and 39 about Lila the cat, and some wonderful views on that. So that's the evidence. Suggested action steps. I think I need to wrap up these videos. First, review the most common fears you have and see which ones you can release and heal first. Use the audio programs that I've listed throughout this series to help you with this. For example, holistic breathing, ask your soul, heal and transform your suffering. Update your evidence-based knowledge about the truth, the evidence-based reality, by reading the articles and books I've listed. That takes care of this key. Next up, key number 17, how to enjoy relationships with your, quote, departed loved ones now. This is really the capstone of this whole program, but we will do that in the next video. We'll see you then. Let it shine.